Oh, welcome back, everyone, to the Midrash for today's Torah portion, which is Korach. But before we do that, it's as we read in Devarim, let's pray. Our Father, we have eaten and we are satisfied, and we thank you for the land in Yeshua's name. Amen. Amen. So this Torah portion is Korach. Before we get into that, I want to talk about two things. One, interesting about the Torah portion. I want you to turn in your Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 2. 2 Kings chapter 2. Melachim bet dos. Beginning at verse 23. I'm going to read from the ISR. And he went up from there to Beit El. And as he was going up the way, some youths came from the city and mocked him, saying to him, "Go up, Baldy. Go ahead, old Baldy." And he turned around and looked at them and pronounced a curse on them in the name of Adonai. And two female bears came out of the forest and tore to pieces 42 of the youths. And from there, he went to Mount Carmel, and from there, he returned to Shamaron. Who are we talking about?
Elisha?
Yep, very good. So what would that maybe have to do with this Torah portion? That story. Maybe. I'm just saying maybe. Try to put it together.
Korach means bald.
Korach means bald. So do you really think he caused the curse because they were calling him bald and making fun of his bald head? Or would he more likely call a curse upon them for comparing him to a traitor such as Korah?
Okay. Was I being serious when he said that Korah means bald?
Korach means bald.
Okay, I thought he was teasing.
No,
Okay.
it does. That's what it means.
That's a very strange.
But why would they say the meaning instead of just the name, though? Kind of.
Maybe a translation error.
Nah.
Maybe. I'm not saying that that's
Yeah.
the truth. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
to me, it kind of seems right. But anyway, so then that's that. I just wanted to share that with you. That Korach means bald, and we'll probably go over that in the study. I had on my mind that I wanted to talk about one thing before we got started on this, just so you can be aware that it's out there. You need to always be on the alert of perversions and false teachings. I wish more people were here today that could hear it, and maybe, hopefully, those that didn't make it today will stop and listen. But excuse me, there's a widespread but also growing teaching and belief out there about the nature and origin of God, so to speak, of Elohim. That, and you just can't understand, you can't fathom how many people are buying off on it, that the God as we know, whose name is spelled Yod He Vav He, was one of many from the time period, isn't necessarily a deity, but was an alien from the planet. Sounds like a what?
YouTube video.
Oh yeah, there's tons of it on YouTube. But and then they try to make of this type story, and other beings that were set in this ridiculous teaching that are like this from the same species as the one that they have falsely called the Buffet, and given them, and they have crazy. Inky is another one that you can read about these things, and that they were so powerful from another planet. They were so technologically advanced that wouldn't they seem like gods to such primitive people? And that's how they're explaining it. And they came here and altered our DNA and by altering our. Let me tell you something.
So are you saying this is prevalent among any Jews or Christianity?
I'm telling you, people are falling away from Messianic belief in favor of that ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I think that's what they call it, the alien. I don't know the right word for it, but that theory that alien. Alien culture.
You should really control your name, beating up. That's some really good stuff. I think
Okay, things that we don't have a gospel in this. We talked last week where the sons of Elohim, the daughters of men. Nephilim thing, and that because some other ridiculous. I tell you, I took it right because silver-tongued devils, if you will, versed well in verbal judo, can make something sound almost plausible.
Yep.
I'm telling you, be very careful and don't let your hearts be deceived by some of. I've got a bunch of that I plan to present it sometime. About it and working on it for going to teach on it soon. For a bunch of people, but we just didn't have that audience today, so I wanted to just get that to you. So let's get
You do it
busy.
like on a Monday night? teaching?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly a Monday night. Yeah.
I mean, I just got to say, I find it personally, just me, offensive that we have to, in this venue, so I'm just,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're good. People are leaving Messianic Judaism for that.
I won't go into great detail, but just a little bit that I've been in. In different groups. There was go to church. Judaism.
Anybody?
I like how the Pleasures Bible renders that as an unauthorized person.
I was gonna say a
King
foreigner.
James says foreigner. I
Or
believe,
outsider, I've read.
Which,
Well,
Yeah,
even
foreigner.
even a Levite can be unauthorized.
for the Cohen, to do a Cohen's job, to serve in the sanctuary in that sense. Yeah. So anybody who, but it's not, I would say a foreigner is too
Well,
broad and not, and at the same time, not specific enough. It's simply an person not authorized
Mhm.
to do the job. It doesn't have to be a foreigner, but someone foreign to
that job.
To that job, yeah.
Mhm.
Not foreign in the sense of you're not from Israel, but foreign in another sense. So, yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do not leave the sanctuary unguarded. We are to redeem the firstborn. We're not to redeem the firstborn of an ox, sheep, or goat. The Levite will serve in the tabernacle, the Torah of the Maaser, the tithe, and the Torah of the Levite offering the tithe from the tithe. Levites have to tithe. So chapter indicates kind of things. Path to destruction probably started with putting his self-interests and ambitions above the interests. And this is born out of the first word. Lachak is not always a bad thing. Remember, because in Shemot 6-8, say therefore to the children of Israel, I am Adonai, and I shall bring you out from under the burdens of the Mitzrites. Going on down to chapter 7, and I shall take you as my people. So I shall bring you into the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am Adonai. So what's the difference between Adonai taking Israel to be his bride and that which Korach took? Is there a difference?
Well,
Still taking.
maybe it's because it wasn't his. I don't know.
He was a stealer. There is one additional kind of took that appears in several ancient sources.
That's what I was thinking.
Pippin took. Targum Onkelos begins with, what is that word there? Let's look at that.
Peleg, I think. Peleg.
And he separated himself and he made a division. For this reason, the article translated separated himself instead of literal took. He separated himself, or he didn't take for himself. Yeah. Rashi comments that he took himself to one side to disassociate himself from the congregation to contest the appointment of Aaron to the kahuna. This is what onkelos means when he renders that word. And he separated himself from the congregation to persist in a dispute. This is Rashi's stuff. This is kind of what the family looks like. You can see their dad Levi up there had Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. And you take a look at the family of Kahat there. He had those sons, Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. And Aharon, Miriam, and Moshe all come from Amram. So that makes Korach Moshe and Aaron's cousin, right? Because it was their dad's brother's son, first cousins. I'm guessing they knew each other.
I just find that animosity.
Yeah.
Seems odd that, in a sense, that Korach was not chosen to be the head of the Kohatites. I mean, he was not the selected individual.
Yeah.
So it seems that, I mean, in terms of, getting your shorts in a twist. He might have, because he thought he should have been the one selected. Because now he has someone who's head of the Kohathites. He has somebody superior to him in his own family tree that he's not getting his, his just due, or whatever the term might be.
Mhm.
Another reason for his rebellion might be, another slight that he felt.
Yeah. So according to Numbers 26:11, the sons of Korah did not die, right? Scripture records that the sons of Korah wrote Psalm 42, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 84, 85, 87, and 88. Psalm 42:1 for the choir director. A maskil of the sons of Korah. As the deer pants the water brook, so my soul pants for you, O God. Korach's sons did not join him with the rebellion. Does that mean they violated this mitzvah? Honor your father and mother so that you may live long on the land Adonai your God has given you. Did they violate that by not joining in the rebellion?
No,
Why not?
because it was going against God, so they were choosing God above their parents.
Also, Moses issued the directive after he told the people that everyone should separate themselves from
Yeah.
Korah, and that would show who they were loyal to. If they were loyal to God, they would go back and get away from their destruction.
Oh, that's pretty good. So this is some Midrash, right? Korach was rich. He became rich by looting. Joseph, during the lean years, amassed great treasures for Pharaoh. Joseph built 3 huge buildings to house the treasure. Korach later discovered and looted one of those treasure buildings. After he became rich, he was appointed as Pharaoh's treasurer. And he believes that Moshe slighted him. Korach believed that Moses slighted him by appointing his cousin Eliphazan as chief of the Levite division of the Kohathites. And he said, my grandfather had 4 sons, Amram, Yitzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Amram, as the firstborn, had privileges which his sons availed themselves for. Aaron is high priest, and Moses is king. But have not I, the first son of Yitzhar, the second son of Kohath, the rightful claim to be the prince of the Kohathites? Moses, however, passed me by and appointed Elizaphan, whose father was Uziel, the youngest son of my grandfather. Therefore, I will now stir up the rebellion against Moses and overthrow all the institutions founded by him. Korach exclaimed. Moses is king, and his brother he did appoint as high priest, his nephew as heads of the priests, and he allots the priest the heave offering and many other tributes. And he tried to make Moses appear ridiculous in the eyes of the people. Shortly before this, Moses had read the people the Torah of the fringes in the borders of their garments. Korach now had garments of Tefillah made for the 250 men that followed him, all of whom were chief justices. Arrayed thus, Korach and his company appeared before Moshe and asked him if they were required to attach fringes to the corners of these garments. And Moshe said, yes. Korach then began this argument. If, he said, 1 fringe of the Tefillah suffices to fill this commandment, should not a whole garment of Tefillah answer the requirements of the Torah, even if there be no special fringe of Tefillah in the corner? He continued to lay before Moses similar artful questions. Must a mezuzah be attached to the doorpost of the house, filled with the sacred books? Moses answered, yes. Then Korach said, 270 sections of the Torah are not sufficient, whereas the 2 sections attached to the doorpost suffice? Korach still put another question. If upon a man's skin there show a bright spot the size of half of a bean, is he clean or unclean? And Moses replied, unclean. And continued Korah, if the spot spread and covered the entire skin of him, is he clean or unclean? And Moses replied, clean. Instructions so irrational, Korah, cannot possibly trace their origin from Elohim. The Torah that you taught to Israel is not, therefore, Elohim's work, but your work. Hence, you are no prophet, and Aaron is no high priest. Yes, go ahead.
Ben has a comment. It says, following your parents into sin is dishonoring. It dishonors God and it dishonors you. Your parents also dishonor themselves. If you follow, you are also dishonoring them.
I don't disagree with that, actually. That's pretty good. Thanks, Ben. So anyway, that stuff is adapted from Legends of the Jews, Ginsburg, 1908. You can see it at that web address there, right? So we'll talk about a little bit more about that in just a minute. On is not mentioned again in Scripture. Apparently, he repented and did not take part in the rebellion. The Midrash says that in contrast to Korach's wife, who told him that Moses was trying to disgrace and humiliate him, On's wife wanted him to take no part in the rebellion. She first tried to persuade him with argumentation. What difference does it make to you? And if Aaron is a high priest, you will be a student. If Korach is high priest, you will still be a student. When On was unconvinced, his wife gave him wine until he was drunk and put him in bed. Then she and her daughter sat down at the entrance of the tent with their hair uncovered. When Korach and the rebels came to call On, they saw them and turned away. And so On was saved. Of course, we know this is not biblical. This is stuff quoted in other sources. Bamidbar is with reference to this miraculous deliverance to and his life spent in doing penance to his former follower Korach called on the penitent son of Pelet, which is a miracle. His true name was Nemuel, the son of Eliab, a brother of Datan and Abiram. Let's go to men of name. They rose up before Moshe, some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, called ones of the meeting, men of name. ArtScroll says those summoned for the meeting, men of renown. And they assembled against Moshe and Aaron and said to them, enough of you, for all the congregation is set apart, all of them. And Adonai is in their midst. Why then do you lift yourself up above the assembly of Adonai? And when Moshe heard it, he fell on his face. Called ones of the meeting, those summoned for the meeting. The presence of so many men of renown added weight to what Korah was saying. So if you were Korah, what would have been the correct way for you to approach Moshe with your grievances? Is there a correct way to go there and say, hey, what about this? Or do you gather an army of the
Probably would have been
the best people, Special Forces A team, if you will? What's a better way?
I would have been better for him to go talk with him alone, like you said.
If he would have just done the Matthew 18 process, you mean?
But on the other hand, though, was what Korah was upset about, was it right for him to be upset about that?
Well-
Something that had been so obviously instituted by God, was it right for him to be so angry?
Well, in his mind, it probably was. You know, think about how many times when you were growing up and your brothers or sisters, maybe not you because you're the oldest, but your brothers says, that's not fair. How come he gets one? Or my son would always come to me, Dad, can I get a candy bar? Allie got one yesterday.
Meant to add weight to your argument.
Yeah.
It does seem like though throughout history, I mean, the pattern of going to war because you felt slighted in something seems to have been, it's a pattern. It happened quite frequently, like during the Wars of the Roses, thinking of,
Sure.
Warwick the Kingmaker feeling slighted at Edward IV not letting him choose a bride in France. And so, he led a rebellion against him, changed sides, as well as his brother was, his brother's titles were removed from him. And so he also joined in the rebellion. So same kind of thing when in dynastic struggles, I mean, you can see this dynastic struggle in the sense of they're all family, that when they feel slighted or that their power is diminished by other members of their dynasty, there is, often bloodshed results. And this is a rebellion in a similar kind of sense.
Why some of them, when they became kings, went about killing everyone who might have a claim to that throne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the tower, etc.
So even from the highest positions down to down to the lowest, tiny little thing. Everyone, it seems like many times you're one insult away from a war. You're one insult away from a brawl of some sort.
It seems that with Korach, I mean, you could approach, if Korach would have approached him and said, I have a grievance here with this, and approach him that way, instead of leading 250 men of renown against him to intimidate him and try and turn over. The whole the flipping, the twisting of Egypt now being the land of milk and honey versus Israel being the land of milk and honey could Korach have ever been satisfied? Can you satisfy a thirst for power, riches, and authority, so to speak? Could Moses have given him anything short of saying take over the leadership and to have satisfied him?
Well, in history, you see a lot of times, people being satisfied with just getting tribute or just getting a little piece of the pie or something extra, but I don't know in this case, I'm not sure. Might not have been.
Could it be that they actually thought they were in the right, though? Because the Spirit of God moved among them too. The Spirit of God prophesied through them several times. Maybe they were just looking at those events in the wrong way, thinking that, since God did that among us, we also can do this, and it is all right.
And remember, these men had sided with Moshe at the golden calf, for example.
Yeah.
And they had survived that incident, and the whole changeover of the priesthood, they had survived it by being loyal to Moshe and to Yah versus, going back to Egypt in that sense.
So it's hard to think they were just doing it for status. Maybe they actually felt this was right.
Maybe so.
Well, and it seems to me like what Korah said, though.
We might talk about that. I'm sorry.
Oh, it seems like the original accusation that Korah brought against Moses, to me, reflects a lot of what I've heard happens in the Torah movement. This, an attitude of, who do you think you are? I'm just as good as you are. And not wanting to accept the fact that sometimes, especially in leadership, sometimes people will be, you'll have people that are put above you for one reason or another. And, just because you think you deserve a place of power doesn't really mean that you can have it. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person either. It just means you're not qualified for the leadership position. I mean, it seems to me in the Torah movement, I've run into a lot of people who seem to be upset that they're not in leadership positions or they don't get put there.
Thing you're talking about in Torah movement or whatever human movement.
Yeah.
To me, it's different than this. Serving, being the ones closest to El isn't some.
Yeah, that's not some trifling thing. Yeah,
battling for power within that group.
these are the ones that are going to eat like kings for the rest of their lives.
If you
And wear the
remember,
finest clothes.
Miriam had the same argument.
Yeah, she
The
did.
exact same argument.
And they didn't learn from that. Because remember, with this, when Miriam was punished, not only did she have Tzaraat for a week, the whole camp was halted because they didn't move until she was allowed back in the camp. So it affected everyone, not just her.
So,
Go ahead.
okay.
Ben has a comment. In history, those who got to the top often were still not satisfied, e.g. Napoleon.
Ha!
Yeah.
That's true.
Was it Titan? No, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose was Korah just simply one of those people who couldn't be satisfied with being the low guy on the totem pole?
They think about, the comment I think that JD mentioned was at some point, I don't know if it was during the first part of the service or when you're eating, but that Korach was potentially a firstborn. And so he'd already had lost some power and authority that he thought was rightly for his as the firstborn priesthood. And now basically he's getting demoted, so to speak, and he's just not satisfied with that. But you can satisfy needs But it's hard to satisfy lust, so to speak, lust for power, lust for anything like that. Or I guess you may even say needs versus wants. It's hard to satisfy. It's easier to satisfy a need than a want, because a want can never necessarily be completely satisfied, because there's always going to be wanting something else. So, Napoleon has Spain, but it doesn't have Russia. So,
Well, also, it was kind of obvious that he did have power, because, I mean, he couldn't be, convincing these, 200 guys, to go around with him if he didn't have some type of power. So he already did have some type of power in there.
I think his attitude probably should have been, and the people under, yes, God has moved through us, prophesied through us, done all this stuff through us. That's great, and he's brought us close to him. That's what he wants us to do, right there. Be satisfied in that position. Say, look, you got more than the other Israelites got to be.
Mm-hmm.
He'd say, be content.
Yeah. Let's talk about the incense. Do this. Take fire holders, Korach, and all your company, and put fire in them, and put incense in them before Adonai tomorrow. And it shall be the one who Adonai chooses is the set apart one. Enough of you, sons of Levi.
I think it's kind of humorous. A little bit before this, where Korach told Moses, you take too much on yourself. Now here Moses saying, Levites, you take too much on yourself. Turned it around on him.
What does Shemot 36-9 say? Says this. Excuse me. You shall put it before the veil that is before the ark of witness, before the lid of atonement that is over the witness, where I am to meet with you. And Aaron shall burn on it sweet incense morning by morning. As he tends the lamps, he shall burn incense on it. And when Aaron lights the lamps between the evenings, he shall burn incense on it, a continual incense before Adonai throughout your generations. Do not offer strange incense on it, or an ascending offering or grain offering. Do not pour a drink offering on it. So incense here, the Hebrew word ketoret, first used in Shemot 25:6. Since that time, only Aaron and his sons have ever been told to use ketoret.
There's a comment by Ben that says, the problem was that Yahweh had offered them the opportunity to be king/priest back at Sinai. They rejected it, so that's why there is a high priest.
Wait, what?
Problem was that Yahweh had offered them the opportunity to be kings and priests back to Sinai. They rejected it, so that is why there is a high priest. Not sure I follow that.
Is that going back to that, the Jewish theory that everybody, all firstborns were priests, but then they forfeited the right of the golden calf, and that's where the Levites became priests?
Well, I think that
He's referred to
that's
as a nation of priests.
yeah, it says kingdom priest in
Kingdom
Exodus
priest.
19:6. So the idea of a firstborn priesthood, I think, is scriptural, and then the changeover was at golden calf. The incident caused the changeover of the priesthood to the Levitical priesthood. I don't remember kings being discussed as an option at Sinai.
I don't either. I'm not sure.
But the high priesthood was already given. In other words, Aaron had been given the job of high priest even before these rebellions had occurred.
Yeah.
It just was the Levites did not have the priesthood in that same way that they have it as the servants, as the firstborn priesthood would still be subservient. It seems like it's the Levites, the role of the Levites became the role of the firstborn priesthood, but it still seems like Aaron was the high priest as well as his descendants, from my understanding at least.
Yeah. I can't recall. I'll have to look at it, but this is what Wayne was saying a little bit is the ultimate twisting here of verses 12 and 14. And Moshe called Datan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and said, we are not coming up Is it little that you've brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you would also seize total rule over us? Also, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of the fields and vineyards. Would you bore out the eyes of these men? We are not coming up. So he's twisted that around, the land flowing with milk and honey part, right? Completely turned it around. And land flowing with milk and honey, familiar words, twisted application. They had the gall to describe the land of their servitude with the same words that God used as the promised land. Bore the eyes out. Everyone can see what's going on. And of course, you look at chapter 12, verse 7, not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my household. The phrase for we walk by faith, not by sight is not the first idea. That wasn't invented by Paul.
Yeah.
That was long before Paul, right? All Israel around them fled their shrieks, shouting, the earth might swallow us too. Then fire came out from Adonai and destroyed the 250 men who had offered the incense. And so here's from Targum Jonathan, the scream from the deep, El is righteous, his verdict is true, and the words of his servant Moshe are true. We are evil because we rebelled against him. That's, of course, from commentary, Aramaic commentary. Go ahead.
Ben's comment, royal priesthood, this rebellion, the words they used was that Yahweh was among them, and they would only be the case, and that would only be the case if they were part of the royal priesthood, which they said, Moses, go up and speak for us. We cannot face him.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Ben. But all the congregation of the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aharon on the next day, saying, you have killed the people of Adonai. And it came to be, when the congregation assembled against Moshe and Aharon, they turned toward the tent of meeting, and see, the cloud covered it, and the esteem of Adonai appeared.
Amazing. They're always doing that right after some miraculous thing. They're always.
Yeah.
It just seems amazing how they could even comprehend or think how Moses could open up the earth to swallow up, those people and kill them. How could it be anyone but God doing that?
Yeah.
Just amazing to wonder how they could reason that in their heads. But
So this is your translation here, Wayne. Why don't you read this slide?
Yeah, it's an anonymous interview with an Israelite who asked to remain anonymous. Korach and those guys had some pretty good points. We're out here stuck in this desert heat. The leaders of the tribes saw the land, reported what they saw. Giants, even Nephilim, were in the land, and even if they went in, they would kill us. And for pointing that out, 10 of the 12 leaders and a lot of other people were killed. If you are in tight with Moshe and Aharon, you're good. But if not, they're going to put some kind of plague on you, and you'll die or be swallowed up into the earth like Korach and the others yesterday. It doesn't pay to be a leader around here, particularly if you speak your mind and say something opposed to what Moshe says. Korach and those guys had some pretty good points about Moshe and Aharon, those two Levites who had brought us to this place of death. Please don't put my name or tribe. I don't want any Levite vengeance. End of the interview.
End of interview.
I'm not sure if the tape survived. That's just the transcript. Sorry.
So what do you think about that? I think it's all about Moses and Aaron. Even though Moses and Aaron are doing what Adonai told them to do. But let me ask you this. So we don't have to really listen to what God says. All we got to do is listen to what Moses and Aaron say. Is that good enough?
That's like a trick question.
So this is a trick question.
It's a trick question. The next day. So Moses and Aaron take the fire holder, put fire in it from the altar and lay incense on it, and go hurry into the congregation and make atonement for them. The wrath has gone out from Adonai, the plague has begun. Aaron took it as Moshe commanded and ran into the midst of the assembly and saw that the plague had begun among the people. And he laid the incense and made atonement for the people and stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. And those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died on account of Korach. Then Aharon turned to Moshe at the door of the tent of meeting, for the plague had stopped. So what is going on here? How does incense make atonement?
Because Moses said that.
And you better not do, you better do what Moses tells you to do.
This whole thing is about doing what
You're
Moses
going to get swallowed up. What was going on here?
said. I don't know, but this wasn't a large span of time. 14,000 people just dropped dead. And it was described almost like a wave that was coming through, because at some point he could stand between.
Yeah, like something you'd see in a movie, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they must have been
Happen instantly.
14,000. How many per minute would that have been? Just dropping dead like flies.
Seems like it must have been happening all around though, because it seems like if that had just been one tribe or one side of the camp, a whole tribe would have been wiped out or something like that.
How would you define he stood between the dead and the living if it was dead all around?
Well,
It sounds like it was almost like a squall line or something.
The squall line.
You had to get between the squall line and the people.
They couldn't have been stacking the dead up that fast all in one place.
could have been figurative in that sense. I don't know. But
And then imagine the cleanup they had to do after.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of the death of the firstborn in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Of course, that was all around.
That was all
They didn't
around.
have the firstborns
It
only in
was
this
a
side of town.
defined place you could stand between the dead and the living.
but as far as like, it's not like it was confined, by whether or not there was blood over the doorpost or
Yeah.
not, or God was.
Any questions before we go to 17? Speak to the children of Israel and take from them a rod from each of their father's house of all their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each one's name on his rod and write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi, for there is one rod, the head of each of his father's house. And it came to be on the next day when Moshe went into the tent of witness and saw that the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had budded and brought forth buds and blossomed and bore ripe almonds. And Moshe brought all the rods from before Adonai to the children of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. And now on the next day Moses went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds and produced blossoms. The word here is tzitz, and it bore ripe almonds. So I don't know what that, I just used your slides. I don't know what that TCI YCI is. Wayne, it might have been a
Hebrew that didn't transfer.
okay, yeah, Hebrew. It had to be tzitz, right? The one I put in there?
Yes.
Tzadi Yod Tzadi Safit.
Yes. And it didn't.
Yeah,
They probably threw the root for tzitzit, and that used to show in Hebrew.
yeah.
So that could also mean like the fruiting of, the sprouting
Blossom.
Blossom, yeah.
blossom of.
Mhm.
So take that to where it says, and you shall know them by their fruits, sprouts,
Flowers.
So the dye should be blueberries.
it may not be.
Yeah.
But you'll know them by their seeds.
I have a question though. It seems like
It's a Midrash.
after something so big as the earth opening up and something like that everyone could see, watch and see, and then all of a sudden they do something that's hidden. It's in a tent. They wait a night and they come back in. Seems like they would think that would be more fishy than what they had witnessed.
Mm.
Seems like if the earth opening up couldn't have convinced them that it was from God, how could that have convinced him? It just seems like to me. I'm just wondering,
Almonds on a stick.
because it seems kind of like a smaller miracle than the earth opening up.
Think about this today. I'm going to use a hypothetical. Let's just say Group A wants to persecute Group B. Group B are staunch followers of Adonai. Group A are staunch followers of some other false deity. The ground just straight up opens up and kills 250 of those people, swallows them up, and then closes back up. Think about if it happened today and people saw they're having a protest. Group A is having a protest at the mall and the parking lot opens up. They all get swallowed and then all of a sudden it closes on top of them. What are the people going to say when they see that? What are people going to say when they see that today?
They probably just
That
think it was a
wasn't of God,
natural.
because there is no God.
Yeah.
I don't believe in God.
They probably just think it was a natural cause, something like that.
Climate change.
Yeah.
They would blame it on climate change or something like that.
Something other than God.
Yeah.
Some-
Cannot
It was a
believe God.
coincidence.
Turn it around to face it back to point B. Yeah, something like that.
So I think no matter how God punishes this country.
Yeah.
As long as its leaders don't attribute that punishment to God in any way, it's not going to do nothing.
That's a
They're gonna
good
be of the
point.
Same opinions, do the same things over and over. And the people, meantime, suffer for it.
But this here seemed to be accepted, though. It seemed to be as if, like, they kind of took that and was like, okay,
No, I think they were pretty shaken up.
okay.
Yeah, it even says they're like, oh my God, we're going to die. We're going to die. What had happened? We do not want this to happen to us.
They knew it was from God.
Moses,
They
you
said-
did
they said
this.
as much.
Moses, you did this. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. They knew. But the people today wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. I remember, I'm going to say maybe 5, maybe 10, as much as 10 years back. I remember seeing on the news there was just one guy, and he was not a wholesome guy, had strife with a lot of people. The floor underneath the bed that he was sleeping in, the ground opened up, and that guy got sucked into the hole, and the ground covered up on top of him. That was on the news. And I remember them talking about, well, he wasn't a good guy or anything, and I remember thinking to myself, God punished that guy. I mean, he did something.
And we
I
actually
had to think of
witnessed that in the earthquake in 1962. We were there during that earthquake. We witnessed that.
You saw it
The
happen.
ground
Yeah.
just, boom, like that. People, cars, and buildings just falling in.
Wow.
Zoom, like that.
And they were gone.
And that was it.
And back then, though, it was called truly an act of God, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say that anymore. Yes.
Ben's comment on the question of how would it be responded today? One word: spin.
Spin. That's good. All right, moving on. Aaron's rod. Adonai said to Moshe, bring Aaron's rod back before the witness to be kept as a sign against the rebels, so that you put an end to their grumblings against me, lest they die. Moshe did as Adonai commanded him, so he did. 1 Kings 6-8, I'm sorry. And the priest brought in the ark of the covenant of Adonai to its place, into the speaking place of the house, to the most set apart place under the wings of the cherubim. The cherubim spread the wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and its poles, and the poles extended so that the ends of the poles were seen from the set apart place in the front of the speaking place, but they were not seen from outside, and there they are to this day. There was not in the ark only the 2 tablets of stone which Moshe put there at Horeb, where Adonai made a covenant with the children of Israel. They came out of the land of Mitzrayim, and it came to be, when the priest came out of the set apart place, that the cloud filled the house of Adonai. Here we are in Hebrews. Behind the second veil, there was a tabernacle, which is called the Holy of Holies, having the golden altar of incense and the ark of the covenant, covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden jar holding the manna, and Aaron's rod which budded, and the tables of the covenant. So what about the oral tradition? Tosefta Tractate Yoma of the Mishnah also says that Aaron's rod was kept in the ark of the covenant. There was nothing in the ark except for the 2 tablets of stone that Moses put there, according to 1 Kings 8:9.
What was the dimensions of the ark and how big were the rods? Could the rod fit inside?
I don't know. It just says that nothing was in the ark except the 2 tablets of Moshe. But all those other verses say the rods, yeah, and a jar of manna, right? Was all in there. So we have a something that we need to be apologetic about, right?
Talmud agrees with the book of Hebrews.
Yes, it does. Yes. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets of stone that Moses put there. Nothing and except represent 2 exclusionary clauses in succession, which bear the implication that something not mentioned is encompassed here. That means the scroll of the Torah had been deposited in the ark. Talmud Bavli. Has it-
Rabbinic here, like they always say, well, we'll ask Messiah when he comes in.
Right.
Cast the burden of the day upon prophets.
Has it not been taught when the holy ark was hidden there, disappeared with it the jar of manna, the flask of the oil and the anointing, and the rod of Aaron, together with its almonds and blossoms? So if they find the ark tomorrow, what's in it?
Depends on who found it first.
We'll have to ask Indiana Jones later.
He's more than
If the rabbis find it first, it'll be what the rabbis think is supposed to be in it. Because they'll remove everything else.
What if a guy from Apache, Oklahoma finds it?
Qumran scrolls all in there.
Chapter 18.
Well, isn't it possible that when the ark was in like the hands of the Philistines or other peoples that maybe they took those things out?
In my mind, I would think they would die if they touched it.
Probably.
But didn't they, I wonder if the Philistines did. Didn't they touch it and didn't they put things in it or did they send their
Around it.
offerings with
Around it,
Okay, I can't
little
remember.
god statues around it.
Yes, the little golden rats.
Yeah, rats and
Okay.
boils.
Because it seemed like anyone could touch the poles,
Oh.
just not the actual ark.
I don't know, it seems that they did handle it though.
Well,
They hadn't carried it around.
Levites had carried it.
Yeah, but who was it that during David, it sounded like that no one was sanctified there who was carrying it. And they, after they were sanctified, they, started carrying it again. But the only one who was killed was the person who touched the actual box, not the poles.
Because the box is what was holy, but
Yeah.
still even carrying the ark was assigned to another group of people.
Yeah.
So one could carry it, the others could touch it.
Yeah.
Adonai said to Aaron, you and your sons, your father's house, with you are to bear the crookedness against a set apart place, and you and your sons, with you are to bear the crookedness against your priesthood. But bring with you, brothers, the tribe of Levi too, the tribe of your father, to join you and serve you while you and your sons are with you before the tent of the witness. And they shall guard your charge and the duty of all the tent, but they do not come near the furnishings of the set apart place and the altar, lest they die, both they and you. So the people are instructed not to go near the tabernacle, and they're comforted that it's Aaron's and the Levites' responsibility only. Yep. Ooh, thank goodness. I don't have to do that. Right.
God's mercy.
Indeed. All the contributions, these set apart gifts with the children of Israel present to Adonai, I have given to you and your sons, daughters as a law forever. Chukat olam is a covenant of salt before Adonai with you and your seed with you. And Adonai said to Aaron, see, you are not to have an inheritance in their land, nor have any portion in their midst. I am your portion and your inheritance among the children of Israel. And see, I have given the children of Levi all the tithes in Israel as an inheritance in return of the service they are serving, the service of the tent of meeting. So let's read Leviticus 2:13. And I'll turn to Leviticus 2:13. Somebody else turn to Chronicles 13:5.
Second.
2:13 says, and season with salt every offering of your grain offering, and do not allow the salt of the covenant of your Elohim to be lacking from your grain offering. With all your offerings, bring salt. What about 2 Chronicles?
don't you know that Adonai, the God of Israel, gave rulership over Israel to David forever, to him and his descendants, by a covenant of salt, which is unbreakable?
What is a covenant of salt?
I don't know about the covenant of salt, but salt seems to be the integral part of every sacrifice. That's what sacrifice has to have, or it's not a sacrifice. Correct? Isn't that what we read?
Every offering is seasoned with salt.
Every offering, yep. And even still today, I think traditionally you set apart Shabbat at Kiddush, you take challah and people will dip it in salt. Still even today.
Still even last night.
Yeah, still even last night.
Salt.
The salt, or the tithe of the tithe, but the tithes of the children of Israel, which they present as a contribution to Adonai, I have given to the Levites an inheritance. That's why I've said to them among the children of Israel, they have no inheritance. Adonai spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the Levites and say to them, when you take from the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them as your inheritance, then you shall present a contribution of it to Adonai, a tenth of the tithe. And your contribution shall be reckoned to you as grain from the threshing floor and as filling from the winepress. Thus you also present a contribution to Adonai from all your tithes which you receive from the children of Israel, and you shall give the contribution to Adonai to Aharon the priest. So even the Levites who receive the tithes are not exempt from tithing. Any questions? Should we be collecting tithes today?
I was.
And if so, what should we be doing with them? Should we?
Well, I don't really see where anybody can garner the authority to say that the tithe belongs to them. I mean, I could see where someone might want to give tithe as a principle, but I just don't see where anybody could say they have the authority to collect a tithe.
What are the circumstances that have to be in place to say it's time to give your tithes?
Well, I think you probably have to be a Levite or a priest. You have to have a temple to work in and a temple to collect.
What about people who say or whatever have the argument that I'm doing the work of a Levite today by, I'll just say me, for example, and I'm not asking you for tithes, I promise, but Wayne and I, we come here every week and we teach the Torah to you and try to help you understand it. We answer your questions. We research your questions. We try to help you by delivering the word of Elohim to you. Are we not doing the work of Levites? Are we not doing the work of Kohen?
I hope this is the right answer. to say that
Should we not be entitled to your tithes? Just asking.
Are you working in the temple?
I'm supposed to say, I mean, that's, Levites worked in the temple and they served.
My temple works every day. I'm not asking for your tithes. I'm just
So are you?
posing
trying to
the
say
question.
Your body should be the temple? Are you saying the same thing?
This-
Korach said, United?
It's big enough for everybody to fit in, I'll tell you that. Anyway, should we be collecting tithes? My answer is no, but if you want to do it and it's a thing of your heart, you do it as you see fit.
Offerings, yes.
Offerings, yes. Tithes,
Ties,
No.
alms, and offerings.
Being generous.
Yeah.
To think, if there's not a functioning indoor tabernacle or a functioning priesthood, that's what the purpose of a tithe is to
Yeah.
keep that in operation.
They didn't have another way to make a living or eat.
They're kind of
That was
forbidden.
their pay.
That was their JOB.
right, because they weren't farmers. They had no land to till. And if they grew a tomato in a pot outside their tent, someone would come and steal it. I just made that last part up.
22nd Hezekiah.
So what is the name of next week's Torah portion?
You know, that guy.
Anybody? Don't cheat. You should have it memorized by now. Hukat. Hukat.
I do have, before we get off of it.
Yeah.
I think we missed them. interesting thing that we hit on last year, called the pearl, is when Moses said, get away from the tents, or the tent of Korach. The actual word there is get away from the Mishkan.
Korach. Sounds right.
Yeah, I think I remember us going through that,
There's
yeah.
argument that him and his 250 quote, priests
Set up their own
already doing
tabernacle.
their own system.
Interesting. I remember talking about that now that you bring it up.
King James gets it right, calls it Mishkan. But other spell it.
Well, I just have to find, I guess, because numbers are in, at least New American Standard 1619.
That's not it. The one where Moses said, told him to get away from the tent of Korah, or the dwelling of Korah.
Because that word has a word ohel in it.
Oh, that'd be tent.
That would be 10. There's another,
There's only one place that uses it, in that one verse. I forget which one it was.
I thought it was kind of interesting because doesn't Peter reference the rebellion of Korah in one of his books?
Yeah.
As being like
Peter,
false
yeah.
teachers of today, that they will perish in their rebellion, kind of like Korah did. If I'm remembering that right.
Yeah, it's actually 1624. Speaks to the congregation saying, "Get back around the dwellings of Korach, Datan, and Abiram." The word for
Some
dwelling
versions
is
say
Mishkan.
tents.
Yeah. The word for dwelling is Mishkan. So
Huh.
which
Get away from the tabernacle of the devil. Abba Father, thank you for letting us come here today and enjoy the Sabbath. It is a delight and we love it. We thank you for it. We look forward to it every year. Please go with us this week. Let us do your work. Please be with us. Let us do our very, very best at everything we do. Please be with those who could not be here with us tonight and those who are traveling and abroad. We praise you. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Thanks, Judy.
Yeah. Where did these chairs come from? Was there a row here? Yeah, I bet you.
Yeah, I got mine from about over there.
Okay. Glad you guys came.
That was a good one.
Why were you late?
I'm coming on, Addie.
Why were you late, Addie?
So I could drown in.
No, well, I guess I failed to inform George that he was going to be driving.
Be your chauffeur.
No, I